Some people make decisions that shake the world. Julia Hill was one of those people. But what was it that transformed her from an ordinary young woman into a revolutionary figure? Why did she climb a 200-foot ancient redwood tree and stay there for 738 days? In this video, we'll dive into her courageous story and discover how this young woman, known as Butterfly, became the voice of nature.
The first 3 months up here were the most difficult for me. I was broken physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I had to be broken on every level. And the reason I had to be was because when I prayed and I said, okay, if this is what I'm meant to do, then please, Creator, use me. Allow me to be a vessel. In order for me to be a vessel to be used, I had to have my attachments broken. Because attachments make us solid. You can't be a vessel, a true vessel, if you're attached. You have to be emptied out first. You have to be shaped and formed.
Before moving on to the video, subscribe to the channel to support me, and don't forget to like and share the video. Julia was born in 1974 in rural America. As a child, she lived with her family in a camper, surrounded by the beauty of the wilderness. Growing up with nature's simplicity, she learned to appreciate its rhythm and power. But as a young adult, her outlook changed after a near-fatal car accident. That ordeal taught her how precious life is and made her consider the footprints humans leave on this earth. Driven by this newfound awareness, she wanted to dedicate herself to something bigger, but how? In 1997, Julia joined an environmental tour in California and confronted a harsh reality: massive deforestation. Trees that had stood for hundreds of years were disappearing at an alarming rate. During this tour, she encountered one of these ancient trees, a 200-foot redwood that locals called Luna. This 600-year-old tree, towering proudly toward the sky, captivated her heart. To Julia, Luna wasn't just a tree. It was a being that held centuries of wisdom within its branches. Standing next to this giant, she knew she would do whatever she could to protect it. Initially, Julia planned a short protest, intending to stay in Luna for a few days. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into 2 years. Living on the high branches, exposed to the wind and rain, was no easy task. With only a sleeping bag and blanket, she braved freezing nights, storms, and the immense isolation that can weigh even heavier than the strongest winds. Yet, it was Luna, her faithful companion, who gave her the strength to carry on. Each morning, each breath of fresh air reminded her of why she was there. Let's hear from her about the difficulties she experienced.
When I climbed into the tree, I was still very attached to comfortability. I was attached to fear, I was attached to anger and frustration and sadness. I reached a point where it was learn and transform or die.
Two days after the men pulled out from having me under siege, the worst storm came. It lasted 18 hours. And it was howling. It sounded like wild banshees, the tarps. Like that, but times like 1,000. Just the wind was so hard that the platform was tilted at an angle like this. It was just a constant 60, 70 mile an hour wind that had the platform tilted. And then the 90 mile an hour gust would come and wham! And just fling me. Just whoop, I went flying.
As days went by, Julia became an inspiration. From media to environmental groups, people worldwide began to support her cause. Every rustling leaf, every gust of wind through Luna's branches seemed to whisper encouragement to Julia. Her determination became a symbol of resistance and resilience, of fighting not just for a tree, but for the dignity of our planet.
It's interesting how this experience has taught me about letting go of attachments. And I thought I had let go of all of my attachments. I'd sold all my belongings. I'd been living in a tree for a couple of months at this point. You know, I'd really been proud of myself for letting go. But that night I realized the one thing I hadn't let go of was my attachment to my own life. And I was trying so hard to stay alive that it was clenched. My teeth were clenched, my eyeballs were clenched, my muscles are clenched. It's like maybe if I just clenched hard enough, I would hold on to my life. And meanwhile, it's just, Wah! And hail's flying at me and bouncing off of me, and I'm getting hit with sleet, and I'm sopping wet and getting thrown all over the place. And the hardest gust is when I literally flew like 3 feet over a branch of Luna. And I grabbed onto it. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die.
So, what did Julia's courageous act inspire? And how did this legendary journey end? Her path wasn't easy, but it sparked a movement. The simple act of climbing a tree started a revolution, and we'll discover the full story of the woman who fought from the treetops.
I want to be strong for you, Luna. I want to be strong for the forest, but I can't even be strong for me. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I heard this voice. Think of the trees in a storm. Okay, I'm thinking. You start to come to me and I start thinking the trees in the storm. The trees that try too hard to stand up strong and straight are the ones that break. The only ones that make it through are the ones that bend and flow and let it go. Julia, now is the time you too have got to let it go. You can't be strong, you can't stay attached, not even to your own life. You got to bend and you got to flow. That's the way to make it through this storm, and that's the way to make it through the storms of life.
Julia's fight finally came to an end in 1999. By then, she was recognized worldwide as a warrior for nature, but leaving Luna's branches was a tough choice. She had to see if her efforts had saved not only Luna, but potentially all ancient trees. Through endless campaigns and public support, the logging company finally backed down. Luna, along with a 60-foot radius of surrounding trees, was granted protection. Julia's journey didn't just save a tree. It reshaped how people saw environmental protection. When she finally descended from Luna, she left as more than an environmentalist. She had become a symbol of hope and courage. Julia's story reminds us of our connection to nature and the strength each of us has to protect it. Her 738 days in Luna echoed around the world, symbolizing a quiet defiance against destruction. This is not just a story about a tree. It's about rediscovering the ancient bond between humanity and nature.
So I did, I let go. I started hooping and hollering and screaming and laughing and crying, and if there'd been a hidden camera, we would have gone, she's nuts. And I was, but that's how I made it through. And the reason I made it through is because I let go of my life. It was like, okay, if I die, I die. Because I've let go of my fears now, that come along with being afraid to die or being afraid to get hurt, they don't have any control over me anymore. No one has control over me anymore. You want to hurt me? You want to stoop to your lower self? Bring it on. Because you're not taking my love, you're not taking my exuberance, you're not taking my zest for life. And when I go, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna howl and rage to the very end, you know? And that storm taught me that lesson.
Julia Hill's journey shows us that one person, driven by conviction, can indeed change the world. Her message is clear. If we want change, we must be brave enough to take the hardest paths.